So now that we have linked the ball to the ball controller, all we need to do now is to create a controller for squash and stretch. So basically for the squash and stretch, we're going to make use of another feature here in Maya. So first, you have to change your menu set to animation. So I'm going to click this drop-down menu, and from modeling, I'm going to go to animation. So once you go to the animation menu set, notice that the menu will change. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. First, I am going to select the mesh or the ball. And then here in the menu, I'm going to look for deform. So inside the deform menu, I'm going to look for nonlinear. So inside the nonlinear, all you need to look for is squash. So go ahead and click it. Okay. So after creating or after selecting the squash deformer, you will notice that you will have another controller inside the ball. So I'm going to turn on this X-ray feature or this X-ray button to see what's happening inside the mesh. There. As you can see there, we have this controller. So for us to be able to control this squash controller, I'm going to press Ctrl A on my keyboard to open the attribute editor. Okay, so inside the attribute editor, you have here 3 tabs. So all you need to do is to look for squash 1. So inside squash 1, you have here the nonlinear deformer attributes. So basically, the attribute that will be controlling the squash and stretch is called factor. So you have here a slider, and as you can see here, when I move the slider, it will basically control or affect the mesh, creating stretch, and squash. Okay, for us to be able to have a more functional squash and stretch, here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to look for the squash 1 handle inside the attribute editor, and then look for transform attributes. Okay, so first, under translate, you have here 3 values. So these 3 values are basically X, Y, and Z axis. So all we need to do is just to set the Y axis to 0. So basically, we want the position of the deformer to be at the base of the mesh. We want the squash and the stretch to start from the base, not from the middle. Okay, after doing that, I'm going to go back to the squash 1 tab. And then I'm going to change, or I'm going to edit the position or the boundaries. Because you can see here, the squash and the stretch moved. So it's like having an offset. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to set the low bound, this one, to 0. So what it will do is basically, it will change the boundary or the lowest boundary to the base of the mesh. And then for the high bound, I'm going to set this one to. So by doing so, we still have the correct boundaries. But if we try to move the slider for the factor, as you can see, the squash and the stretch is basically starting from the base of the mesh.